Hello, and welcome back to the next episode of Into the Depths. Today, we're going to be talking about a man, the myth, the legend, the Axeman of New Orleans. Some say he was a demon, others say he was just a man. But in New Orleans, a city known for jazz, voodoo, and mysteries, there's one name that still chills the people to this day: the Axeman. During the years of 1918 to 1919, a mysterious killer stalked the streets of New Orleans. He broke into homes at night, he killed with an axe, and then disappeared without a trace. He didn't steal from his victims, he didn't leave any evidence behind at the scenes, and he didn't have a clear motive for any of his crimes. Even with all that, he still did something that puzzles investigators to this day. He wrote a letter to the newspaper claiming to be a demon straight from hell and demanding the city play jazz music to save their life. And you know what? They did. This is the story of the Axemen of New Orleans, a tale of blood, music, paranoia, and one of the most unsettling, unsolved murder cases in American history. New Orleans in the early 20th century was unlike anywhere else in the world. You had jazz music echoing through the streets, Catholic and Creole culture mixing with deep Southern traditions, and you had immigrants from Italy and Germany setting up shop on every block. Not to mention you had the war raging in Europe, the Spanish flu killing millions, and economic crises tightening their grip on daily lives of everybody. People were scared, people were tired, and people were sick. And into that tension stepped something or someone that made everything worse. Someone who didn't just kill, but terrorized the streets. The first confirmed Axeman attack took place on May 22, 1918. Joseph and Catherine Maggio were an Italian-American couple who lived above their grocery store. On the night of May 22nd, someone quietly removed a panel from their back door, snuck inside, and slit both their throats with a straight razor. Then, as if that wasn't brutal enough, the killer smashed their heads in with an axe. A strange detail, since the razor had already done the job. The weapons? A razor that belonged to Joseph's brother Andrew, who lived in the same house. Police suspected him, but he swore he didn't hear anything, even though the walls were thin. What's weirder? Nothing was stolen from the home. The house was left mostly untouched, except for the blood painted from wall to wall. The police chalked it up to a crime of passion, but just weeks later, it happened again. Our next attack took place on June 27, 1918, at the home of Louis Bessemer and Harriet Lowe. Bessemer also owned a grocery store, and Harriet was his mistress. At dawn, a delivery boy found the back door open and both of them barely alive in bed. Bessemer had been struck in the head with an axe, again, his own, while Harriet had her face nearly shattered with the same axe. To make matters stranger, Harriet lived long enough to accuse Louis of being a German spy in the midst of World War I, but he was never convicted. Once again, entry through a chiseled door panel, blunt force trauma, and not a robbery of the home. The killer had a signature, but no face, no witnesses, and no evidence to point to a suspect. This next attack is a little stranger. This one takes place on August 5th of 1918 at the home of Anna Schneider. This case was completely different from the rest. Anna Schneider wasn't Italian, she wasn't a grocer, and she survived. She was pregnant and sleeping when someone broke in and beat her severely in the head. She remembered nothing. Nothing was taken, and a lamp was suspected to be the weapon. Not an axe this time. Still, the MO was familiar: night attack, home invasion, and violent blows to the head. So many attribute this to the Axeman of New Orleans, even though it doesn't seem likely to be him. Just 5 days later, on August 10th of 1918, the killer attacked again. This time was also different. This time at the home of Joseph Romano, a 7-year-old Italian grocer was found by his nieces after being brutally attacked by an axe. He died 2 days later from the head trauma. His nieces saw a man fleeing, described him as dark skinned, heavy set, wearing a slouched hat and dark clothing. Once again, very similar to the previous cases, back door panel removed, axe found at the scene, and not a robbery of the home. And just those two witnesses who saw shadows running in the dark. At this point, the city was gone into full panic mode. Chaos brewed in the city for nearly 7 months when on March 13th, 1919, the local newspaper received a letter. And it wasn't from a politician, it wasn't from a priest, but it was from the Axeman himself. And here is what the Axeman had to say to the people of New Orleans. Now, to be exact, at 12:15 earthly time, on next Tuesday night, I'm going to pass over New Orleans. In my infinite mercy, I'm going to make a little proposition to you people. Here it is. I am very fond of jazz music, and I swear, by all the devils in the nether regions, that every person will be spared in whose home a jazz band is in full swing at the time I have just mentioned. If everyone has a jazz band going, well, then, so much the better for you people. One thing is for certain, and that is that some of you people who do not have jazz going on that specific Tuesday night, if there be any, will be getting the axe. However, unknown to the people of New Orleans, just 3 days before, the home of Charles and Rosie Cardamillan were broken into, this time across the river in Gretna. Charles and Rosie were attacked in their sleep. Their daughter Mary, who was just 2 years old, was killed. Rosie survived and accused their neighbor, Frank Giordano, of the murder. He and his elderly father were both arrested, despite having clean-cut alibis. Later, Rosie recanted, and the charges were dropped. This just leaves us with another case with no real leads and more tragedy building up in the city of New Orleans. Our next attack took place on August 10th in 1919 at the home of Steve Boca. He was another grocer, and it was another attack at night. Boca survived the blow to the head and stumbled outside disoriented, looking for who attacked him. Like the others, he later, when questioned by the police, remembered nothing of the attack. The Axeman had not waited long for his next attack. This time, on September 2nd of 1919, at the home of Sarah Lawman. Sarah, she lived alone, and after a couple of days, her neighbors had noticed that she hadn't been seen and no one had heard from her. And finally, when they went to check on her, they found her unconscious in her bed, missing teeth, and bleeding from her head, a blunt object next to her. That blunt object, you say? It was an axe. She too survived, but could offer no description of her attacker, as her head trauma had left her unable to remember anything from her attack. Now we head to the witching month, October, for our final known victim of the Axeman. His name was Mike Pepitone. His wife had heard a commotion and entered the room to find her husband dying, the room soaked in blood from wall to wall, from ceiling to floor, and a man in dark clothing fled the scene right past her, even touching her. This was the Axeman's swan song, and after that, he was gone, never to attack again, never to be seen, and never to be heard from again in the history of New Orleans. So, who was the Axeman? Well, in the long story, no one really knows, but there are many theories as to who he might be. The first theory for who the Axeman might be is a serial killer who's targeting Italian grocers, as most of the victims were Italian and many were grocers. Could the attacker have a vendetta? Could he be racist? Or could he just had a grudge against immigrants? Maybe, but that doesn't explain the randomness to his attacks, or why they stopped, because at that point no one knew who he was, so why would he, if he had a vendetta against these immigrants, quit attacking in the first place? But that's just one of many theories for who the Axeman could be. Another theory of who he could be is a skilled tradesman or carpenter. All of the break-ins were done using a chisel, neatly, cleanly, and quietly, like someone who knew how to work with wood. That's led some to believe that he was a carpenter or laborer, someone who wouldn't send out a spotted near house and could come and go as he pleased, looking into and scoping out houses for victims to attack next. This next theory, the most unlikely of all of them, was that he may have been a demon or a walking urban legend. Look, people believe in demons back then, people believe in demons now. In the Axeman's own letter, he claimed to be one. He passed over homes playing jazz. He never left fingerprints. He never got caught. In a city known for spiritualism, mysticism, and voodoo, people genuinely believed he was something not from this world. Today, he's a part of the city's folklore. You'll find his name next to voodoo queens, ghosts, and politicians as one of the most scariest people to be home in New Orleans. The next and most likely theory for who the Axeman could be was there was no Axeman, and it was just multiple killers and copycats. They all had different MOs. There was large gaps in times between the killings, and survivors' confusion may have led them to believe that there wasn't just one man. Maybe there was copycats, maybe the police lumped in unrelated crimes, and maybe it was just panic within the people, leading to paranoia. Or maybe just maybe, there was one man, and he just got tired of killing at the end of the day. Whoever, or whatever he was, the Axeman left a permanent scar on New Orleans. He wasn't the deadliest killer in American history, but he was one of the most terrifying, because he left no trace, because he made the city dance, and because, all in all, he got away with it. There's no grave for the X-Men, no mugshot, no confession, just blood, music, and silence. And over a century later, people still wonder, did we ever come close to catching him? Or was he never meant to be caught in the first place, as just a being of endless horror? So that's the story of the Axeman of New Orleans, a phantom killer, a master of fear, and a man who turned music into protection. If you enjoyed this story, let me know. There are more unsolved crimes and creepy legends out there for me to talk about. Thanks for watching, and maybe, just maybe, keep a record player spinning tonight, just in case the Axeman returns.